Only you can stop the loss of access to our public lands. I'm sure you've heard about the 317 miles of trails we lost in Moab, Utah. You may have also heard about the San Rafael Swell Travel Management Plan, where they're proposing to close 44% of all the 2,000 miles of roads in the swell. The Bears Ears National Monument Resource Management Plan is also out for public comments now, which will make huge areas ineligible for future OHV travel. In the next 12 months, we have plans coming for the Henry Mountains, Fremont Gorge, Trail Canyon out near Kanab, which is where the Barracks Trail is, Ashley National Forest, Dolores River, Ponsagon, also by Kanab, even more national monuments. And although we could have lost more, we've not exactly been winning at this game. Do you know why the 49ers lost the Super Bowl? It's actually pretty simple because they did not understand the overtime rules. If you want to win, you must know the rules to develop a winning strategy. Let me look at some clues about comments from the San Rafael swell scoping to put it in perspective. There were 1,854 comments received during the scoping period. 26 of those came from public meetings, 7 came from government agencies, 16 came from special interest, and then 1,805 came from individuals, including form letters. Now, that's a lot of comments. But when we look at it, the vast majority of the comments, 83%, were either form letters or non substantive and were not considered in their evaluation of the scoping period. If we want to win, we must change our strategy. We've got to count on you to make relevant, substantive comments. We're going to talk a little bit about how to do that. So let's look at how the BLM defines substantive comments. Substantive comments do one or more of the following: question with reasonable basis the accuracy of information, question with a reasonable basis the adequacy, methodology for, or assumptions used for the environmental analysis. So the adequacy means, did they do enough? How did they do it? That's the methodology. Assumptions, what did they assume to be true when they made their statements? If it presents new information relevant to the analysis. So if you have a new trail or you have a trail that you think was misrepresented, that's new information. If you present reasonable alternatives other than those analyzed, that's a substantive comment that will count towards us. If it causes changes or revisions in one or more of the alternatives, that's also a substantive comment. Let's talk about what's not substantive. Comments in favor of or against the action. Those don't count. I like it, I don't like it, those don't count. Comments that only agree or disagree with BLM policy or resource divisions, that's essentially the same thing. Comments that don't pertain to the project area or the project, I wish government would just get out of my life. That's not a substantive comment, and they won't take that in the right way. Comments that take the form of vague, open ended questions also don't carry any weight. So let's give you some other tips, including knowledge, experience, or evidence as it relates to your observations and comments. So, what does this mean? This could mean GPS tracks, it could also mean photos with GPS locations. Make sure you include those in your comments when you send them in to BLM. If you present new information, that almost always creates a substantive comment. If you share issues relevant to the environmental analysis, that is also a concern. We believe that the fact that they did the scoping period was back in 2021 and the Moab closures and all of the other land use actions, that's a relevant change in the availability of trails for OHV use. Suggest alternatives to proposed project and reasons why they should be considered. So we also think that maybe there should be a fifth alternative that we're going to introduce into the scope of things. Avoid comments like I don't like this or keep my trail open or you can close this one. Keep those comments out. If you don't have substantiating background on those, they don't carry any weight. And remember that form letters are treated as basically one comment. So even though sending a form letter is better than doing nothing, It's not really much better because in that analysis I showed you early, 1,805 of those form letters were basically disregarded. Your comments should be relevant. Use the BLM route reports to identify BLM concerns. We'll talk more about where to find those, but there's mainly two sections that you need to take a look at. The general evaluation questions at the beginning of each route report, and the resource and use issues are at the end. So let's take a look at the general evaluation questions. Note the evaluator's answers. Read what they said. Yes, no's are simple answers, but read what they said, and that gives you a clue about what your comments might want to contain. Questions are often better than statements and comments. Ask why, what, where, when. Those are great questions to always pose in the form of stating a fact and then asking a question. If they answered that last question that's highlighted, if they answered that potential impacts can be mitigated, ask them how they came to that conclusion to close. So, in some of these cases, they said that the route could be mitigated, the impacts could be mitigated, but on the next page, the last page of the report, resource and use issues, in this case, they closed all four alternatives. So that's a good question. When you look down the resource and use issues, there will likely be a long list of things. Things like biomeds, that's plants, special status animals, and managed species animals. Visual reference, you don't have to worry too much about that. Special management areas, don't worry too much about that. Water resources, it's within 100 meters of a wash. What does that have to do with a trail in the desert if it's within 100 meters of a wash? Ask them about what erosive soil is. Is there mitigations that could be made to mitigate those problems? PFYC, what is that? That's fossil remains. So class 4 is considered high. So what difference is that? What mitigations are there for a class 4 or class 5 fossil yield? It's within 50 feet of steep slopes. I'm not sure what that has to do with it. A lot of major highways are within 50 feet of a steep slope. Look at the 70 going through the swell area. What route specifics should you include? There's a lot of things you can include, but mostly it's relevant facts. Questions coupled with facts are much more effective than just facts alone. Ask them why, when, where, what, why. Tell them what you found, and then ask them why they considered closing it. Be sure and look at the most recent BLM route report to identify their resource impacts. This is a valuable source of information to make sure that your comments are relative. Attach photos. You want to show significant views, items of interest, obstacles different than neighboring routes, campgrounds. Include examples of trail maintenance problems like widening or braiding of trails because you know what? Those you can fix, right? And volunteer to fix them, especially if you're a part of a group that would agree to maintain the trail if they kept it open. One little caveat, be sure not to go on any part of the trail that is marked closed. So stay off any closed routes, and for God's sake, don't take any pictures of your vehicles on closed routes. If a closure would result in a circle route becoming one way, mention the impact that would have on recreation and also the connectivity it would have to other routes. Tell them how is this route unique to you? What would you lose? If you're part of another group that may be also negatively impacted by this, mention those other recreation types. Oftentimes, equestrians, mountain bikers, hunters, fishermen, rock climbers, rock hounders are also affected by closures of roads. If you're a part of one of these groups, be sure and let them know that it impacts you as well in that group. Ask them what they've considered to mitigate the impact. What else could they have considered? If it's wildlife related, would seasonal closures make a difference? If the BLM route report has errors that you identified, state the discrepancy as specifically and clearly as possible, giving evidence for your findings. GPX tracks can also be very helpful in this regard. If a route is missing from their inventory, please give as much specific information as you can. This is very, very important to find missing routes. We estimate that there's probably 300 miles of missing routes in the swell alone. What to do with your prepared comments? Obviously, you're going to need to submit them to BLM, but since the comment period is not open right now, we're just asking you hold on to them and get them ready. The freshest mind is always right after a run. So take some time to write your report, go back later, take a look at the route reports again from BLM and try and augment those reports. Get your pictures ready so that you know what you're going to submit. Please submit your pictures directly from your mobile device. If you have to submit them separately, you can do that. Uh, just reference that it's in connection with another comment that you made. Be sure to look at the details at utahpla.com for that travel management plan and follow the specific instructions there. We will keep that site updated all the time with the latest and current information so you know exactly what to do and when the period opens that you can actually submit your comments to BLM. We may ask you to submit the comments to us as well, and we'll give you instructions for doing that at a later time. We need to start acting as big as we are. We're a huge group just with motorized OHV alone. When you start adding in mountain bikers, equestrians, hunting, fishing, other resources that will be impacted, other users that will be impacted negatively, we are huge. And together we can win, but we can't do it without you. We need you to get involved and you to take the time to spend 15 or 20 minutes writing a detailed report on the trails that you visit. Thanks for watching and thanks for helping out.